The land of sun, surf, laid-back cities, stunning nature, and, of course, koalas and kangaroos. Australia gets a pretty good rap as a place to live. You might get a little sunburned, but you'll be earning good money in a beautiful country with plenty to do and one of the world's most famous coastlines. But there's a lot about Australia you may not know, including some pretty big drawbacks to living there. And surprisingly, it has little to do with venomous snakes or killer jellyfish. Let's start with the obvious. If you look at Australia on a map, it's far from pretty much everywhere. The world's most isolated continent. Do you like international travel? Have family in Miami? Your best friend lives in Vienna? That's adorable. You're never gonna see them again. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but traveling from Australia to pretty much anywhere outside of a handful of South Pacific islands and Southeast Asian countries is a gigantic drain, both in terms of hours in flight and cost. Using Google Flights, let's look at costs of travel from Sydney, home to the biggest airport in Australia, to some of the top tourist destinations in the world. A flight to London takes a minimum of 22 hours each way with the shortest available route, including a mandatory layover. This will generally cost over $1,000, unless you manage to find an exceptional deal on a day with very low bookings. But maybe London is too far. The quickest flight to Istanbul in Turkey is around 21 hours, including a layover, and will cost close to $800 for a round trip. Dubai does have a non-stop option, 14 hours on a flight for, again, over $1,200. Los Angeles is also non-stop, so for a measly 13-hour and 40-minute flight, again, each way, you can get to Hollywood. That's more than one full day and closer to 2 spent in a plane for round-trip travel. Living in Australia can feel isolating, not just for those with family overseas or a love for international travel. The continent is so geographically remote that even the news cycle often feels disconnected from the rest of the world. Local Australians interested in international affairs complain domestic news heavily favors coverage of Australian events. They feel like they have little idea what's going on elsewhere in the world. In fact, Australians are seemingly less concerned about the news in general, which may be a byproduct of living in what amounts to a bit of a geographical bubble. There are no hostile neighbors to pay attention to. No one is seriously concerned about New Zealand threatening them, and the rest of the world's problems seem so far away, because they are. According to the University of Canberra's 2024 Digital Media Report, Australia has the highest percentage worldwide of people who get the news only once a day or less. Only 51% of Australians care to check the news daily, maybe even less, compared to 34% of people globally. They also tend to be less interested in politics. That sense of isolation might also reflect Australia's highly concentrated media landscape, especially when it comes to competition. According to the Communications, Media and Internet Concentration Report, between 2019 and 2020, Australia had the second highest level of media concentration in the world, trailing only Brazil. It's a revealing statistic, especially for the home of Rupert Murdoch, one of the most influential media moguls on the planet. 4 companies controlled 84% of the newspaper sector, up from 78% just 3 years earlier in 2019. The companies include Murdoch's News Corporation, Nine Entertainment, Seven West Media, and Australian Community Media. Experts worry that this high concentration of media in the hands of just a few companies could lead to less accountability in reporting, the demise of independent local news, and news media companies serving the biases of their bosses. But Australians may have found a key to mental health, and avoiding the news may turn out to be the healthier way to live. But for someone who wants to keep a pulse on what's happening internationally and discuss it with their neighbors, Australia can be a challenging place. Many Australian firms rely on partnerships with US and European businesses, but coordinating across time zones can be a logistical headache. In practice, it often means sending an email at the end of the workday only to receive a reply the following morning from the other side of the globe. Then it's another full day before the cycle repeats. Unless, of course, someone's willing to jump on a 2 a.m. conference call. When it's noon in Sydney, it's 3 a.m. in London, 7 p.m. in Los Angeles, and 10 p.m. in New York City the day before. So while the pay in Australia is generally quite good, with a minimum wage of around $16 an hour, about twice that of the US, and an average salary of over $60,000, having a job that requires international collaborations or clients can be a monumental hassle. Well, at least Australia is pretty huge itself, so surely there are a lot of places to easily get to and see within the country, right? It turns out, not so much. Most of Australia's population is located on the coasts, and the big cities are pretty far from each other. A lot of Australia is just empty space. The country covers 2.9 million square miles, 7.7 million square kilometers, and has a population of 26 million people. In comparison, the European Union covers a little over half the area, at 1.6 million square miles, 4.2 million square kilometers, and has 450 million people. Perth, for example, has the distinction of being the most isolated city in the world, more so even than places like Yakutsk in Siberian Russia, thanks to the fact it's located 1,300 miles, just over 2,000 kilometers, from the nearest city. In fact, it's closer to the Indonesian coast than it is to the eastern coast of Australia. And distances can be deceiving. Looking at a map of Australia, you might think the major cities of Adelaide and Melbourne look relatively close. That is, until you get into your car in Adelaide and 8 hours later find yourself just starting to approach the Melbourne city limits. Flights between cities like Sydney and Darwin or Melbourne to Perth can easily run $300 to $500 round trip. This makes it a not too economical option for Australians looking for a quick domestic getaway. Well, at least no matter where you are on the Australian coast, you have sunny, breezy, Southern California-style weather to keep you in vacation mode no matter what. Almost. Actually, in some places, not at all. Though most people's conception of Australia includes sunny, beachy weather, the climate varies a lot within the country. If you're staying in Melbourne during the Australian winter, you'll probably need a few sweaters and a nice blanket. Temperatures in southern cities like Melbourne and Canberra often plummet to the 30s and 40s in Fahrenheit during the winter. And unfortunately, even staying indoors won't keep you warm. Dr. Nicola Willand from the RMIT University School of Property, Construction, and Project Management broke down some of the problems with Aussie heating. To begin with, the average Australian home is relatively large, making heating an issue. Australian homes tend to be uninsulated, drafty, and fitted with inefficient heaters, she said. In fact, only 46% of homes in Victoria and Australian Capital Territory, the two regions that house Melbourne and Canberra, have gas-ducted central heating. Others use really inefficient room heaters, and others have nothing at all. Meanwhile, in the north, the climate feels less beachy and more oppressively sweltering. Temperatures in Darwin, one of Australia's northernmost cities, are in the 80s and 90s all year round, with humidity in the summer frequently reaching 70 to 90%. Australian authorities categorize dangerous heat as anything above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius. In 2019, Darwin experienced 45 days above this temperature, including an 11-day straight heat wave. Scientists expect the number of scorching days to worsen as climate change wreaks havoc on the entire planet. Well, there may be extremes, but at least there's still a lot of sunny, mild climate zones within Australia, including cities on the eastern coast, right? The good news is, there are. The bad news is, the sun there can kill you. Okay, the sun anywhere can kill you, but Australia has the highest melanoma rate in the entire world. Are Australians just really bad at wearing sunscreen? No, it turns out the sun really does hit differently in that part of the world. But contrary to popular belief, it has little to do with the ozone layer, which is generally found further south in Antarctica, and only for part of the year. The ozone layer over Australia can be up to 5% thinner than most parts of the world, depending on the time of year, since it is closer to the hole. But that's not the primary reason Australians tend to get more sunburned and more skin cancer than the rest of us. The southern hemisphere is exposed to more UV radiation for a number of reasons. First of of all, there's less pollution and dust in the air blocking the radiation out. That's due to fewer industrial centers and smaller land masses being found in this hemisphere. Second, during the southern hemisphere's summer, December through February, Earth is significantly closer to the sun than it is during the northern hemisphere's summer. So when Australia tilts toward the sun, it's not just facing direct sunlight, it's also over 3 million miles, 5 million kilometers closer to it. Add to that the fact that the majority of Australians have Northern European, or at least some kind of European ancestry, and their skin didn't really evolve to cope with the blazing sun of the Southern Hemisphere. 90.2% of Australia identifies as white, and 67.4% of the country is descended from Brits. Combine this light freckled skin with an outdoor-focused lifestyle, and you get a country where 2 out of 3 Australians will be diagnosed with skin cancer at some point before their 70s, according to the Australian Cancer Council. It's such a problem that locals have nicknamed it Australia's national cancer. Well, at least Australians spend a bunch of time outdoors. They have that easygoing, laid-back lifestyle, and if you ask some people, maybe a little too laid back. Because barefoot culture is a real thing in Australia, even in the cities. New York Times writer Seth Kugel was taken aback by this custom when visiting New Zealand and Australia, saying people walk around barefoot, on the streets, in the supermarkets, all over. It's not everyone, but it's a significant enough minority to be quite striking and a bit disconcerting. Sure, city sidewalks are clean, but they're still city sidewalks. In Perth, there's even an elementary school with a shoes optional policy. While this might sound like heaven for some, it's a little too laid back for others. Paradoxically, Australia can then be weirdly strict when it comes to other rules. Take speed limits, for example. In most of the world, going 5 miles an hour over the posted speed limit won't generally get you pulled over unless you're driving erratically in some other way. But that is not the case in Australia. Speed limits are relatively low, topping out at a maximum of 68 miles an hour, 110 kilometers an hour, and are strictly enforced, either through speed traps or cameras. And cameras are everywhere. Cameras in the state of Victoria only allow leniency for just under 2 miles an hour, 3.2 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, barely a tap on the gas. And those aren't the only strict rules you will find in the country. Australians have a pretty intense drinking culture, but a lot of rules around it. You cannot drink in most public spaces, and most places that sell alcohol have to get very specific licenses that usually ban the sale of liquor before or after a certain time. Though laws do vary by state, most states ban the sale of alcohol past 2 a.m., but that doesn't apply to all alcohol. Some drinks can only be served until midnight. These drinks are referred to as rapid intoxication drinks, an elaborate way of saying shots. The Queensland law also bans anything that's over 45 milliliters of alcohol or premixed drinks with more than 5% alcohol or more than 2 standard drinks within it from being served after midnight. Cocktails are exempt since they're not made to be drunk quickly. There are some exceptions, as the state of Queensland designates some areas as safe night precincts, and venues within those regions can serve liquor until 3 a.m. In addition, up to 6 times a year, they can get special approval to serve alcohol until 5 a.m. for specific events. A Safe Night Precinct is an initiative managed by local boards to create safer environments for customers, so nightlife patrons can party and drink later into the night with less violence and disorderly behavior occurring. Boards usually include the owners of bars and clubs in the area. To create a safer area, they introduce more rules and regulations. In addition to networked ID scanners brought into the venues, which share data with each other across every single venue, police banning notices were introduced. If customers become offensive, disruptive, or even violent, police will ban them for a minimum of 1 month, and then can issue an extended banning notice, which lasts for 3 months. These notices ban you from every venue in the state, meaning you've effectively been kicked out of all Queensland bars at once. While this is a great initiative in theory, some critics worry that the banning notices can be applied to bar patrons a little too easily, creating a very subdued and sanitized nightlife in the area. If the rules around alcohol sales and nightlife aren't enough to put you off drinking, the price of alcohol itself might make you sober. The country has some of the highest and most confusing alcohol taxes in the world. Beer and spirits are taxed based on alcohol content, while wine gets the WET, or wine equalization tax, which is 29% of the full price of the drink. These categories have some exceptions, sub-regulations, and generally just a confusing mess of laws governing the duties on liquor. The bad news is that inflation will get you here as well, as the tax goes up every 6 months to keep up with rising prices. In any case, it seems Australia isn't really the place for people who want to party the night away, or even have coffee in the afternoon. Because bars and clubs aren't the only places closing early in Australia. Australians love their coffee, and by all accounts, make some of the best brews in the world. But apparently, they want to drink it early, because lots of coffee shops in the countries shut their doors by 2 p.m. You will find some that stay open until 5 p.m., but rarely past that. Retail stores also usually shut down by 5 p.m., which is great for the employees seeking work-life balance, but not so good for anyone who works elsewhere and needs to get any shopping done. In that case, you'll have to wait for the one late-night shopping day a week when stores keep their doors open until 9 p.m. At least, if you live in Australia, you'll have plenty of money. The Australian economy is famously strong, and their minimum wage guarantees necessities, and general salaries are some of the best in the world. Perhaps that's a byproduct of Australia breaking records by going almost 29 years without a recession, experiencing their last one in 1991 and not sinking again until the pandemic hit in 2020. So life should be great with Australian money, and it is, until you want to buy a house. The Australian housing market, especially in major cities like Sydney and Melbourne, has gotten insanely expensive. While that's true of pretty much every country in the 21st century, in Australia, the problem is especially bad. It started in 2001, when the country's Reserve Bank cut interest rates 6 times without being in a recession. Why did it do so? To prevent a recession, as the US had just experienced its dot-com bubble bursting. Though Australians did successfully avoid a downturn, the rate cuts were followed by first home buyer grants that helped people snap up a lot of real estate, a capital gains tax discount that made it easier and more profitable for investors to buy up a lot of property, and a lot of incoming immigrants seeking housing. At the same time, there was no real effort to build new houses or provide infrastructure. So all of these factors together caused home prices to skyrocket. Around the year 2000, the price of the average Australian home cost 3 to 4 times the income of the average Australian. Even though wages have gone up pretty significantly since then, home prices are now 8 to 9 times the average Australian salary. As of April of 2025, the median house price in the country is around $892,000 in Australian dollars, or around $576,000 US dollars. However, if you're just looking at real estate in the capital cities, that median goes up to $1 million, or $645,000 US dollars, according to Cotality. And the real estate boom shows no signs of slowing down, leaving younger Australians in despair that they will never own a home. In the past 5 years alone, home values have gone up by 39.1%. And unfortunately, housing is not the only part of Australian life that's expensive. Australia has the 13th highest cost of living in the world, with its price index ranking just under that of the United States. In fact, many observers believe Australia is in a cost of living crisis. From mid-2022 to late 2024, the disposable income of households in the country fell rapidly, even though Australia didn't get hit by inflation nearly as hard as some other countries. Living standards shrunk by an astounding 6.7%. This probably isn't helped by the fact that the average Australian also has expenses you may not expect, like healthcare. Now, the country does have a universal healthcare system, meaning any Australian can walk into a public hospital and get free care and treatment. However, Australia operates with a mixed public and private healthcare system. Appointments with doctors and specialists as well as tests can be a little more complicated. Though costs of each visit are partially subsidized by the federal Medicare system, the patient also pays something for each visit. But perhaps the biggest medical cost you'll encounter in Australia relate to your teeth. Out of all OECD countries, Australia ranks 6th in dental care expenditures per capita, with $11.1 billion spent on dental care in the years 2021 and 2022. However, most of that money wasn't spent by the government healthcare system. In fact, 60% of dental care expenditures in 2020, or $6.67 billion, were out-of-pocket payments from patients. One dentist, Melbourne-based Dr. Wessam Ataya, says that dental treatment is expensive in Australia because running a dental practice requires a lot of money. In addition to paying for 5 years of schooling, quote, "The requirement for a dentist to stay up to date requires them to spend a lot of money on continuing professional education," end quote. We have more bad news about the cost of living in the land down under, as there's another expense you're going to have to take into account in Australia. A car. As with most places with massive distances between cities, Australia is a very car-reliant country. But the problem isn't just getting from one city to the next. Australians can barely get around their own cities without a car. According to the 2021 census, the average household in Australia has 1.8 vehicles. A couple of cities have made great efforts to create a reliable public transportation system. Melbourne, for example, has the largest tram network in the world. But Australian cities still seem to be missing the mark on public transportation compared to a lot of European capitals. One report by the Climate Council, called Next Stop Suburbia, found that between 33 and 66% of people living in Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth did not have easy access to any form of public transportation. The report defined easy access as within a 10-minute walk of public transportation that runs at least every 15 minutes during peak commuting hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So naturally, many Australians are forced to buy a car, but the costs of owning one aren't just the upfront purchasing costs and gas. In 2023, Savings.com found that Australians can pay more than $15,000 a year for the privilege of owning a car, in order to pay for insurance, registration, maintenance, and, of course, gas. In any case, you probably don't want to get too flashy a car, because then you might become the victim of tall poppy syndrome, something really common in Australia and neighboring New Zealand. As cute as tall poppy syndrome sounds, it's actually not a very nice thing. It describes a phenomenon in which people who distinguish themselves or succeed in any way face backlash and criticism from those around them. And Australia is full of it. One study in the country found that student athletes that performed better than most ended up being victims of bullying. While no single explanation accounts for this phenomenon, Dr. Rumit Billen, who wrote a 2018 study called The Tallest Poppy, says, quote, "Egalitarianism and humbleness can be linked to Australian and New Zealand's culture, and there's an expectation people should not be boastful or act in ways that are perceived as flagrant." Some argue that tall poppy syndrome happens more to people who make an effort to place themselves above the crowd and get a big ego. People who like Australia's approach point out that, unlike other rich countries like the US, which have seen an increase in narcissism throughout the 21st century, Australia has experienced nothing like that. Perhaps that's because there's some evidence linking the rise in narcissism to social media use. And it's hard to use social media a lot when the internet speed is a crawl. We're not exaggerating there. Internet speeds in Australia are bad, especially for such an otherwise rich country with modern infrastructure. In 2024, the country ranked 82nd overall in the world for speeds, placing it below countries like Oman and Czechia and just above Uzbekistan. The speed test website gave Australia more generous rankings when it comes to mobile internet performance, rating it 22nd worldwide behind Croatia and Estonia. And Australian customers have to pay a high price for those slow internet speeds. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission Group found that the average cost of a broadband plan in the country is $84 per month, compared to an average of $48.60 per month internationally in 2023. So why is the internet in Australia so bad? Well, for a number of reasons. First of which is Australia being so isolated from the rest of the world. This makes it much harder to literally connect the continent to anywhere else. The amount of big, empty space in Australia, interrupted by the occasional city, also makes building efficient internet infrastructure hard. Maybe that's why the government has decided to completely let it go, apparently waiting for the internet infrastructure to crumble before it does anything about it. Private companies have a hand in the country's bad download speeds as well. There's a complete lack of competition in the market, which is dominated by a total of 3 companies. Telstra with 38.3% of the market, TPG Group with 20% of the market, and Optus with 12.4% of the market has created zero incentive for any internet provider to improve their service. And this doesn't just affect the internet in the remote Australian outback, we're talking about downtown Sydney. Speaking of the outback, while Uluru may be one of the most awe-inspiring sights in the world, and there's a lot of beauty to be found in the rugged interior of the country, it's important to remember that Australian nature is dangerous. We've all heard of the many species of venomous snakes, spiders, and jellyfish that will kill you with a single bite. There are 66 such species in total, which isn't an international record, but Australia is especially famous for them because they happen to be some of the most intensely venomous and therefore deadly species in the world. But the last person to die of a spider bite in Australia was Jaden Burley in 2016, and before that, no one had died by spider bites since 1979. So the danger from these species seems overstated. The real danger in Australia is nature itself. Venturing into the ocean or the outback requires preparation. If you're driving into the country's interior, you better have fuel and water packed into your car, and maybe get a satellite phone as well. Cell phone coverage is almost non-existent. Gas stations, or petrol stations, or servos, as many Australians call them, are few and far between, and temperatures often reach oven preheat status. The government occasionally bans tourists from huge parts of the outback for their own protection. In the 2000s, tourists were stopped from going into the Simpson Desert after December 1st, as temperatures in the area were expected to reach a mind-melting 139 degrees Fahrenheit, 58 Celsius. Local rescuer Joel Fleming, who rescued several stranded tourists from the desert, says the temperature of the sand in the summer can hit 203 degrees Fahrenheit, 95 Celsius, hot enough to burn through shoes. According to an article in The Guardian, about 40 people die in the outback every year, either as a result of extreme heat, crashing into an animal, or getting stranded and dying of dehydration. The ocean might seem cooler, but it poses huge dangers to swimmers as well. You haven't tested your swimming skills until you've been caught by an Australian riptide. According to Surf Life Saving Australia, SLSA, riptides claim the lives of around 26 people every year, and that's not for a lack of trying. A total of 3.7 million Australians have been caught in a rip current at some point in their lives, or 13.5% of the country's entire population. A total of 26% of those caught in riptides required rescue or help to get to safety, meaning the relatively low death count from the water is mostly a result of Australia's lifeguards and rescue teams. That's not to mention the floods, earthquakes, cyclones, and, of course, fires that frequently tear across the country. In 2019 to 2020, Australia experienced the worst bushfire in its recorded history, burning 46.9 million acres, 19 million hectares, an area a little bigger than the entire state of Florida. The fire ravaged over 3,000 homes and led to the death of 33 people. Then, in 2022, flooding so intense that it was nicknamed the Great Deluge tore across Queensland and New South Wales, killing 24 people and resulting in devastating damage. And as recently as May of 2025, flooding once again devastated New South Wales, stranding 50,000 people and killing 4. Unfortunately, the number and severity of natural disasters seems to be getting worse over time, making life difficult for Australians. So while Australia may seem like an idyllic land tucked away on the other side of the world, the reality, as it often is more complicated. Like anywhere else, it comes with its own set of challenges, and sometimes they're not so easy to escape. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.